If you're listening to this alone tonight, look around your room. Look at the walls. Look at the corners. Now imagine finding your own face staring back at you from the bark of a tree deep in the woods. Not a face that looks like you. Your face. Every scar, every wrinkle, every detail, as if someone had carved it while watching you sleep. Because according to an old legend hidden in the forests of northern Europe, there is a place where the trees remember every person who enters. And if the forest ever shows you your own face, you have already been chosen. The forest that remembers faces. Written and narrated by Gregory Sparrow. Welcome to Whispers of Shadow. Nobody can agree on when the stories began. Some say the forest existed long before the village. Others believe the village only exists because the forest allows it. The oldest maps show a dense stretch of woodland covering nearly 30 square miles between the mountains and the river. Nothing unusual appears on those maps. No warnings, no strange symbols, no forgotten names, just trees. Thousands upon thousands of trees. Yet, for more than 200 years, local families passed down a single rule. Never enter the forest after sunset, especially during fog. Most legends have explanations. People get lost. People become frightened. People invent stories. But the stories surrounding this forest never behaved like ordinary folklore. They changed. They adapted. Each generation described something different. Different sounds, different shadows, different encounters. Only one detail remained exactly the same. The faces. Faces appearing inside tree bark. Faces no one could explain. Faces that should not have existed. The first official record came from a church journal dated 1847. A priest wrote about a hunter who returned from the woods after disappearing for 3 days. The hunter was dehydrated, confused, terrified. According to the priest's notes, the man refused to speak for nearly 2 weeks. When he finally did, he claimed that every tree in the forest contained human faces, not random faces. People from the village. People he knew. People still alive. The priest dismissed the story as fever-induced hallucinations, until the hunter mentioned something impossible. He described a face belonging to a young woman who had vanished 3 days earlier. Her body had not yet been discovered. No one knew she was dead. Yet the hunter insisted he had seen her face growing from the bark of an oak tree. 2 days later, her remains were found beside the river. The story spread. Then it disappeared. Villagers avoided discussing it. Life continued. Children grew up. Generations passed. The forest remained. Watching, waiting, remembering. In 1978, a forestry team was sent to survey a section of woodland after reports of unusual tree disease. 3 men entered. Only 2 returned. The missing worker was named Eric Heller. Search parties spent 6 days looking for him. They found nothing. No footprints, no equipment, no remains, nothing. The case remained unsolved. 31 years later, a storm uprooted several trees near an abandoned logging road. One of the fallen trunks revealed something that caused local authorities to temporarily close the area. Inside the exposed bark was a pattern, a shape, a face. The resemblance to Eric Heller was so precise that investigators initially believed someone had carved it. Forensic analysis proved otherwise. The growth rings formed naturally. There were no tool marks, no cuts, no signs of human interference. Yet the face remained, frozen forever within the wood, almost as if the tree had grown around the memory of a human being. Most people never heard about the discovery. The report vanished into archives. The forest remained largely forgotten until 2024. That is where our story truly begins, because that was the year someone decided to film what was happening inside the forest. His name was Daniel Mercer, 32 years old. Independent documentary filmmaker, specialized in local legends and unexplained folklore. Daniel didn't believe in supernatural stories. He believed in cameras, evidence, facts. His channel had a modest audience, nothing extraordinary. Most of his videos covered abandoned locations and regional myths. Then he received an email. No sender name, no contact information, just a single message. Go to the forest during the fog. Attached was a photograph. At first glance, it appeared normal. An old tree standing among dense woodland. Then Daniel zoomed in and noticed the face. A woman's face, embedded in the bark, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, expression frozen somewhere between sorrow and terror. The image looked real, too real. A week later, Daniel drove to the village. He arrived shortly before sunset. Locals were reluctant to speak. Some refused entirely. Others became visibly uncomfortable when the forest was mentioned. An elderly man eventually agreed to answer questions. Only one question. Daniel asked whether the stories were true. The old man stared at him for several seconds, then replied, "How many cameras did you bring?" Daniel laughed. The old man didn't. "I asked if the stories are true." The man nodded toward the forest. "No." Daniel seemed surprised. The old man continued, "The stories are much worse." Daniel assumed it was the kind of answer people gave when they wanted to keep a mystery alive. A dramatic warning, a local legend protecting itself. Nothing more. He thanked the old man and returned to his rented cabin. That night, he reviewed the photograph again. The face in the bark bothered him, not because it looked frightening, because it looked familiar. He couldn't explain why. The woman wasn't anyone he recognized, yet every time he looked at the image, he felt the strange sensation that he had met her before. Somewhere, at some point. Maybe in another documentary. Maybe in another town. Maybe only in a dream. Around midnight, fog began to roll across the valley. Daniel stepped outside. The forest stood less than half a mile away. Even from the cabin, he could see the mist gathering between the trees. It moved strangely, not like weather, not like wind. The fog seemed to flow inward, as though the forest itself were breathing, pulling the mist deeper among the trunks. Daniel filmed several minutes of footage. Nothing unusual happened. Yet, when he reviewed the recording later, he noticed something odd. The microphone had captured sounds he never heard while standing outside. Whispers, very faint, barely audible. Voices overlapping one another, hundreds of them, almost impossible to understand, almost. One phrase repeated several times, the same words, over and over. Remember us. The next morning, Daniel entered the forest. The weather was clear. Sunlight filtered through the branches. Birds sang. Everything appeared completely normal. He followed an old logging trail marked on historical maps. Hours passed. Nothing happened. No faces, no strange sounds, no evidence of anything unusual. Eventually, Daniel began to suspect the entire legend was exaggerated folklore. Then he found the first tree. It stood beside a narrow stream, large, ancient. Its bark twisted into unusual shapes. At first, he almost walked past it. Then he noticed the eyes. Human eyes, not real eyes. Patterns within the bark. Natural formations, yet unmistakably human. A face. Daniel raised his camera. The closer he moved, the more distinct the features became. Nose, lips, cheekbones, an elderly man. The expression looked peaceful, almost asleep. Daniel circled the tree. The face remained visible from every angle. He examined the bark carefully. No cuts, no carvings, nothing artificial. The formation appeared completely natural, yet it was too precise, far too precise. For the first time he felt uneasy. Still, one unusual tree proved nothing. He continued deeper into the forest, then found another, and another, and another. By late afternoon, he had recorded 12 separate faces. Men, women, children, all different, all impossibly detailed. The deeper he traveled, the more frequently they appeared, almost as if the forest wanted him to notice them, almost as if it were guiding him, watching him. By sunset, he reached an abandoned ranger's station marked on old maps. The building was collapsing, half consumed by vines. Its roof sagged inward, windows shattered decades earlier. Daniel decided to spend the night there. The forecast predicted heavy fog, exactly the conditions mentioned in every version of the legend. If anything unusual happened, it would happen tonight. As darkness fell, the forest changed. The sounds disappeared first. Birds, insects, animals. Everything went silent, not quieter. Silent, a complete absence of life. Daniel had spent years filming wilderness environments. He knew forests were never truly silent. Not like this. Even the wind seemed absent. The world outside the ranger's station became motionless. Then the fog arrived. Thick, dense, unnatural. Within minutes, visibility dropped to only a few feet. Daniel positioned cameras around the station, one facing the trail, one facing the trees, one inside the building. Then he waited. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Midnight approached. Fog pressed against the broken windows like pale smoke. Daniel considered ending the recording session. Then, camera 3 detected movement. A warning tone sounded. Daniel froze. The motion sensor had activated. Something was outside. Slowly, he checked the monitor. The trail camera showed nothing. The forest camera showed nothing. Yet the motion warning continued. Again, again, again. Something was moving, but none of the cameras could see it. Then the audio changed. A low sound emerged through the headphones, like distant breathing. Not one person, many, dozens, perhaps hundreds, breathing together. Daniel increased the volume. The breathing grew louder, closer, closer. And then a voice, perfectly clear, directly behind him. Daniel! He spun around. Nobody stood there. The room remained empty. The voice came again, this time from outside. Daniel, his own voice, exactly his voice. Same tone, same accent, same rhythm. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The sound was unmistakable. Something outside the ranger station was speaking, using his voice, and it knew his name. The breathing continued, growing louder, surrounding the building. Daniel approached a broken window. The fog beyond it seemed almost solid, like a white wall. Then shapes began appearing inside the mist. Human silhouettes, standing motionless among the trees. 1, then 3, then 10, then dozens, figures emerging silently from the fog, watching, not moving, not speaking, just standing, waiting, and every single one appeared to be facing the station, facing him. The camera batteries suddenly dropped from full charge to nearly empty. One by one, every device began failing. Daniel grabbed a handheld camera and stepped outside, a decision he would later describe as the worst mistake of his life. The cold struck immediately. Not ordinary cold, a deep, unnatural chill, the kind that felt alive. The silhouettes remained visible, still motionless, still watching. Daniel aimed the camera toward the nearest figure. The image focused, and his blood turned to ice. Because the figure had no face, only smooth, pale skin, blank, featureless, like unfinished flesh. Then the figure slowly turned toward a nearby tree, and the bark began to move. Not physically, visually, patterns shifting beneath the surface, lines twisting together, forming features, eyes, a nose, a mouth, a face emerging from wood. The faceless figure stood beside it, watching, as though waiting for something to finish. And then Daniel realized what he was seeing. The face in the tree was changing, growing more detailed every second. Not becoming human, becoming someone specific, someone familiar, someone he knew, someone whose face he had seen every day for years. His own. Daniel stumbled backward. The camera nearly slipped from his hands. For several seconds he simply stared, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to convince himself that what he was seeing was real. The face in the bark continued forming. Every detail became sharper. His forehead, his jawline, the small scar beneath his left eye from a bicycle accident when he was 12. Even the slight asymmetry in his nose, details nobody else should have known, details hidden beneath years of ordinary life. The tree wasn't creating a face that resembled him. It was creating him. The breathing throughout the forest intensified. Hundreds of unseen lungs inhaling and exhaling together. A slow rhythm, a living pulse. Daniel raised the camera. The display flickered. Static flashed across the screen. For a brief moment, the image distorted. When it stabilized again, something had changed. The face inside the tree had opened its eyes. Daniel froze. The eyes were staring directly at him. Not painted, not carved, not imagined, watching, aware, alive. A violent crack echoed through the forest. Then another. Then dozens. Trees splitting somewhere beyond the fog. The sound spread through the darkness like gunfire. Branches groaned, wood snapped. Roots shifted beneath the soil, The entire forest seemed to awaken, and the faceless figures began moving, not running, not walking, gliding, slowly, silently, toward him. Daniel turned and sprinted back into the ranger station. The doors slammed behind him. His breathing became frantic. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold the camera. He locked the door, despite knowing it wouldn't help. The building was half destroyed. The windows were open. The walls were rotting. If something wanted to enter, it could. The question was no longer whether the figures were real. The question was what they wanted. The answer arrived minutes later. At exactly 12:44 a.m., every camera activated simultaneously. All three screens displayed the same image. Not the ranger station, not the forest. A face, a single face filling every monitor. The woman from the photograph, the woman whose face had first appeared in the anonymous email. Her eyes remained closed. Her expression remained frozen. Then, slowly, her eyes opened. Daniel nearly screamed. The pupils were completely black, not dark. Black, like holes, like empty spaces where eyes should have been. Then the woman spoke. The voice sounded distant, as if traveling from underwater. "Do not let them remember you." The screens went black. The room fell silent. For a moment, Daniel wondered if he had imagined everything. Then something struck the wall outside. A heavy impact. The building shook. Another impact followed. Then another. Something was circling the station. Something large. Far larger than a human being. Daniel approached a shattered window. The fog outside churned violently. Shapes moved within it. Massive shapes, towering between the trees, too tall, too broad. Their outlines appeared only for fractions of a second before disappearing again. Yet each glimpse revealed impossible proportions. 20 feet tall, maybe more. And each one carried faces across its body. Hundreds of faces. Human faces embedded in bark-like flesh. Faces whispering. Mouths moving endlessly. Eyes opening and closing. The sight was so disturbing that Daniel physically recoiled. The forest wasn't filled with trees that remembered people. The trees themselves were made from people, or memories of people, or something worse, something that wore human memories like skin. Then he noticed one face among the countless others, a face he recognized immediately. The old man from the village, his expression twisted with terror, his mouth opened repeatedly, trying to form words, trying to communicate, trying to warn him. Finally, the sound reached Daniel's microphone. A single sentence, repeated again and again. "Don't let it learn your face." The giant shape vanished into the fog. The whisper remained. Don't let it learn your face. Daniel suddenly understood why so many local stories contradicted one another, why each generation described different horrors. The forest wasn't showing the same thing to everyone. It was collecting people, studying them, learning them, remembering them. And once it knew someone completely, they became part of it. A memory trapped forever within the woods. At 1:17 a.m., the breathing stopped. Instantly. Every sound disappeared. The silence felt even worse. Daniel knew something was coming. Instinct told him. The forest was preparing for something, waiting. Then a voice spoke from directly outside the door. Not his voice this time. His mother's. She had died 7 years earlier. Daniel's blood ran cold. Daniel. The voice sounded perfect. Exactly as he remembered. Soft, warm, gentle. Daniel opened the door. Tears immediately filled his eyes. Every rational thought vanished. For one terrible moment, he wanted to believe, wanted to convince himself she was somehow alive. The voice came again, closer. Please. Then another voice joined it. His father. Then his brother. Then childhood friends. Then teachers. Then people he had not seen in decades. The forest was speaking, using everyone he had ever known. Every memory, every connection, every relationship. It knew them all, because it knew him. And Daniel finally realized the horrifying truth. The forest didn't learn faces by looking at people. It learned faces by entering their memories. The moment someone stepped inside, the forest began reading them, slowly, patiently, like roots growing through soil. That was why the faces in the bark looked so detailed. The forest wasn't copying appearances. It was copying entire lives. Every fear, every secret, every memory, every regret, everything. The door began to creak, not opening. Breathing. The wood flexed inward and outward like lungs. The walls followed. The floor followed. The entire ranger station seemed alive, growing, stretching, becoming part of the forest. Daniel knew he had to leave. Staying meant death, or something worse. He grabbed the camera and ran into the fog. The moment he crossed the tree line, the voices stopped. No more whispers, no more breathing, only silence. The forest around him looked different now. The trees stood impossibly close together. The trail had vanished. The landscape no longer matched his maps. No matter which direction he moved, he kept returning to the same clearing, a circular clearing surrounded by ancient trees, and every single tree contained a face. Thousands of faces watching him, waiting, remembering. Daniel turned slowly, examining them. Children, hunters, tourists, villagers, strangers, generations of forgotten people. Then he noticed something even worse. The newest faces looked fresh, not physically, emotionally. Their expressions still contained fear, confusion, shock, as if they had only recently become trapped. One face suddenly moved, its eyes shifted, then another, and another. The entire clearing came alive, thousands of eyes opening simultaneously, thousands of mouths beginning to move, all speaking together, all repeating the same sentence. The forest remembers. And somewhere beyond the fog, something enormous began walking toward him. The sound came first, heavy, slow, deliberate. Each footstep shook the ground beneath Daniel's boots, not enough to knock him down, just enough to make him understand the scale of whatever was approaching. The faces surrounding the clearing fell silent. Thousands of eyes followed the same point beyond the fog, waiting, watching, almost reverent, as though something sacred was coming, or something feared even by the forest itself. Daniel backed away. His flashlight trembled in his hand. The beam cut through the mist. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then a shape emerged, and every thought left his mind. The thing stood at least 30 feet tall. Its body resembled a twisted combination of tree, bone, and human anatomy. Roots dragged across the earth like veins. Branches protruded from its shoulders. Its torso appeared formed from countless intertwined trunks. But its face was made of faces, thousands of them, layered together, growing over one another, mouths whispering, eyes blinking, expressions trapped between agony and surrender. An entire forest of human memories fused into a single living thing. Daniel realized what he was seeing. This wasn't part of the forest. This was the forest. The consciousness behind it. The thing every legend had tried to describe. The thing hidden beneath centuries of stories. The memory keeper. The creature stopped at the edge of the clearing, its countless eyes focused on him. And suddenly, Daniel experienced something impossible. Memories, not his own, thousands of them, flooding into his mind all at once. A hunter freezing to death in 1847. A missing child from 1912. A soldier lost during wartime. A woman searching for her husband. A traveler who entered during a storm. A logger who never returned. Generations, centuries, lives stolen by the forest, every memory preserved, every face remembered. Daniel collapsed to his knees. Blood ran from his nose. His vision blurred. The creature wasn't attacking him. It was downloading itself into him. For the first time, he understood the purpose of the forest. It wasn't feeding. It wasn't hunting. It was archiving, collecting, preserving. The forest believed it was saving people, saving memories from death, saving faces from oblivion. It did not understand that what it preserved was no longer human. It only understood remembering. And now it wanted Daniel to join the collection. The creature took another step. The ground trembled. 1,000 voices emerged from its body, speaking together. A chorus of the dead. We remember. Another step. We remember. Another. We remember. Daniel's camera had fallen beside him, still recording, still transmitting, somehow still working. And then he noticed something. Among the thousands of faces, one face wasn't whispering, one face was screaming. The old man from the village, the same man who warned him, the face twisted desperately, trying to communicate, trying to say something. Finally, Daniel understood. The old man's eyes were not looking at the creature. They were looking above it, behind it. Daniel slowly raised his gaze and saw something even worse. The sky, or rather, the absence of it. The fog had parted. For the first time, Daniel could see above the forest. What he saw shattered reality. There were no stars, no moon, no clouds, only faces, millions of faces, stretching endlessly across the darkness, an ocean of human faces suspended above the world, watching, remembering. The forest was only a root, only a fragment, only a single branch of something unimaginably larger, something that had existed for centuries, maybe millennia. The creature below was merely a collector. The real thing was above, and it had finally noticed him. Daniel felt a pressure inside his skull, a sensation like invisible fingers searching through his thoughts, reading him, learning him, remembering him. Every memory he had ever possessed began slipping away. His childhood, his parents, his first love, his first fear, his name. Everything. The forest wasn't collecting faces, it was collecting identity. Faces were only the visible remains, the final photograph left behind after a soul had been archived. Daniel knew he had only moments left. Then he remembered the woman's warning, the woman from the photograph. Do not let them remember you. At last, he understood. The only way to survive was to become impossible to remember. He grabbed the camera, turned it toward himself, and began speaking, not to the audience, not to the forest, to himself. repeating every detail of his life, every memory, every experience, as fast as possible, fighting to keep them alive, fighting to keep them his. The pressure intensified. The creature approached. The sky of faces descended lower. Daniel screamed his own name. Again, again, again. Then everything went black. The camera continued recording for another 19 minutes. Most of the footage consists of static, distorted audio, unidentifiable sounds. Experts who analyze the recovered files disagree about what happened next. At 2:11 a.m., the recording suddenly clears. The camera lies on the ground. The forest is empty. The fog is gone. Daniel is nowhere to be seen. Search teams spent 3 weeks looking for him. No body was ever found. No trace of him was discovered. Officially, he remains a missing person. The footage was never released publicly. Most copies disappeared. The few fragments that survived circulated through private forums before being deleted. The village still exists. The forest still exists. And every few years another disappearance occurs. Tourists, hikers, photographers, people who ignore the warnings, people who enter after sunset, people who enter during fog. Most are never seen again, but occasionally someone returns, and those survivors always describe the same thing: faces in the bark, watching, waiting, remembering. 3 months after Daniel vanished, investigators reviewed the original footage one final time, frame by frame, looking for anything they may have missed. At timestamp 2 hours, 11 minutes, and 7 seconds, immediately before the recording ends, something appears in the background. Only for a single frame, too brief to notice at normal speed. The image shows a tree standing beside the clearing. Nothing unusual, except for the face growing within its bark. A face that wasn't there earlier. A face that forensic analysts later enhanced. A face identified with near-perfect confidence. Daniel Mercer, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, frozen forever inside the wood. But that isn't the part that terrified the investigators, because when they enhanced the image further, they discovered Daniel's eyes were not closed. They were looking directly at the camera, and beneath his face, carved naturally into the bark, appeared a shape resembling words. The final frame ends before they become fully visible. Yet multiple analysts independently reported reading the same sentence. It remembers you too. End.